I never expected to find someone like Marcus in the middle of nowhere. But then again, I never expected a lot of things that happened that winter. I'd driven 12 hours north to get away from everything, away from the breakup that left me hollow, away from the apartment we'd shared, away from the coffee shop where we'd met, the park where we'd walked every Sunday, the entire city that felt like it was haunted by memories I couldn't escape. My therapist said I needed space to heal. My best friend said I needed to stop running. I compromised by running to a place with a lot of space. The cabin I'd rented was advertised as rustic. That's realtor speak for no Wi-Fi, questionable plumbing and heating that came from a wood stove I had absolutely no idea how to operate. It was perfect, or it would have been if I'd arrived before the first real snowstorm of the season decided to dump 3 feet of powder on the entire region. I made it to the cabin on fumes and stubbornness, my sedan struggling up the unpaved road like it was personally offended by the concept of winter. By the time I got the door open and my bags inside, the temperature had dropped 20 degrees and the wind was howling through the trees like something alive and angry. That first night, I nearly froze to death. I'm not being dramatic. I genuinely thought I might not make it till morning. I'd managed to get a fire going in the wood stove, but I clearly didn't understand the concept of airflow or log placement because it kept going out. I was wearing every piece of clothing I'd packed, huddled under 2 thin blankets that came with the cabin, and I could see my breath forming clouds in the air. I was actually composing my last words, trying to decide if they should be profound or just really petty, when I heard footsteps on the porch. My first thought was bear. My second thought was axe murderer. My third thought was that either option might be better than slowly freezing to death. So when the knock came, solid and confident against the cabin door, I actually felt relieved. I opened it to find a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a different century. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick beard dusted with snow, and eyes that were somehow both sharp and kind at the same time. He wore layers of worn flannel and canvas, and over it all, a heavy coat that looked handmade. In his arms he carried what looked like a massive fur pelt, folded carefully. "You the city guy who rented the Morrison place?" he asked. His voice was deep, roughened by cold, and probably years of not using it much. "I'm a city guy," I managed through chattering teeth, not sure about the Morrison part. This cabin belonged to Morrison. Everyone still calls it that. He looked past me into the cabin, and I saw something shift in his expression. Concern, maybe. "You're doing that all wrong. The fire. You're gonna kill yourself." "Hadn't really planned on that," I said, "but I'm open to alternatives." He almost smiled. "Almost. Name's Marcus. I trap about 3 miles north of here. Saw your smoke, or lack of it. Figured I'd check." He held out the pelt. "Here, you're gonna need this more than I do." I stared at the fur. It was beautiful, thick and lustrous even in the dim light from my failing fire. "I can't take that. That's got to be worth—" "It's worth you not freezing to death, and me not having to explain to the sheriff why I let a neighbor die." He pushed it into my arms. It was heavy and warm, still holding heat from wherever he'd kept it. "Consider it a loan. You can return it in spring when you leave." He didn't wait for me to argue. He just walked past me into the cabin and went straight to the wood stove. I watched, still holding the pelt, as he efficiently dismantled my sad attempt at a fire and rebuilt it properly. He moved with the confidence of someone who'd done this thousands of times, explaining as he went about airflow and wood selection and the importance of kindling. "You got enough wood for maybe 3 days if you're careful," he said, standing up and brushing off his hands. "Storm's supposed to last through tomorrow. After that, you'll need to split more. You know how to split wood?" "I know how to order firewood on an app," I offered weakly. This time he did smile, just a little. "Yeah, that's not gonna work up here." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I'll come by day after tomorrow, make sure you're still alive, show you how to use an axe without taking off your foot." "Wait," I said. "I don't even know how to thank you. The pelt, the fire, I mean—" "Thank me by not dying," he said simply. Then he was gone, disappearing into the snow like a ghost. I stood there for a long moment, holding the pelt and watching the fire he'd built catch and grow. The cabin was already starting to warm up. I spread the pelt over the bed and crawled under it, and for the first time since I'd arrived, I felt like I might actually survive this trip. I dreamed of hands that knew how to build fires and eyes that saw through storms. Marcus came back 2 days later, just like he'd promised. I'd spent those days mostly sleeping under the pelt, feeding the fire carefully the way he'd shown me, and thinking way too much about a man I'd met for maybe 10 minutes. I told myself it was just gratitude, appreciation for someone who'd probably saved my life. It definitely wasn't about the way his voice had sounded in the darkness, or how capable his hands had looked rebuilding the fire, or the fact that he'd given me something valuable without expecting anything in return. I'd almost convinced myself of that when he knocked again. This time I was more prepared. I'd actually showered, using the lukewarm water the cabin's ancient heater managed to produce. I'd found the coffee maker and managed to brew something that was technically drinkable. I felt almost human when I opened the door. Marcus looked exactly the same. Steady, solid, real in a way that most people in my life had stopped feeling. "You survived," he observed. "Turns out your fire-building tutorial was pretty effective." "Good." He had an axe over his shoulder and a canvas bag in his other hand. "Ready to learn how to split wood?" I was not ready. I was extremely not ready. But I followed him out to the woodpile behind the cabin anyway, because the alternative was admitting I was completely helpless, and also because I wanted to spend more time with him. That second reason worried me more than the axe. Marcus was a patient teacher. He showed me how to read the wood, where to aim, how to use the weight of the axe instead of fighting it. I was terrible at first. My city-soft hands couldn't get the right grip. My aim was off. I nearly dropped the axe twice. He never laughed, never made me feel stupid. He just adjusted my stance, guided my hands to the right position, showed me again and again until I finally managed to split a log cleanly. "There," he said, and the approval in his voice felt like winning something important. We worked for maybe an hour, him splitting 3 logs for everyone I managed. The physical work felt good, honest. My ex used to say I thought too much, lived too much in my head. Out here with the axe and the wood and Marcus's quiet presence beside me, thinking seemed less important than doing. When we'd built up a decent stack, Marcus pulled a thermos from his bag. "Coffee," he said, "real coffee. Not whatever city people call coffee." We sat on the porch steps, and he poured us both cups. He was right. It was real coffee. Strong enough to wake the dead. Hot enough to burn, and somehow exactly what I needed. "So what brings a city guy to the middle of nowhere in winter?" he asked. It was the first personal question he'd asked. I wrapped my hands around the cup, feeling the heat seep into my cold fingers. Needed to get away, clear my head. "Break up?" I looked at him sharply. He was gazing out at the trees, his expression neutral. "That obvious? People don't usually run this far unless they're running from something, and you've got that look, like you're trying to figure out how to be yourself again." The accuracy of that statement hit me harder than it should have. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Breakup. Bad one. Or maybe it was a good one. I don't know anymore. We were together 4 years, lived together for 2. I thought we were building something. Turns out he was building an exit strategy." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's rough. You ever been through something like that?" He took a long drink of his coffee. "Different situation, but yeah, I know what it's like when someone leaves." There was a story there. I could hear it in the careful way he spoke, in the weight behind those few words. But I didn't push. We sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and watching the snow begin to fall again, lighter this time. "The Pelt," I said eventually. "It's beautiful. What kind of fur is it?" "Wolf," he said. "Took me 2 winters to track that one. Big male, prime coat. Best pelt I've ever taken." I turned to stare at him. "And you just gave it to me? Marcus, that's got to be worth—" "I know what it's worth." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt something shift in my chest. "But you needed it more. What good's a pelt to me if my neighbor freezes to death? I'm only here for 2 months. Then you'll need it for 2 months. He stood up, collecting the thermos. "I should head back. Storm's coming in again tonight. You'll be okay?" "Thanks to you, yeah." He nodded, but he didn't leave right away. He stood there looking like he wanted to say something else. Finally, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small radio. "Walkie-talkie," he said, handing it to me. "Channel 3. If you need anything or if something goes wrong, just call. I'll hear you." I took the radio, our fingers brushing for just a second. "You do this for all your neighbors?" "Don't have any other neighbors," he said simply. Then he was walking away, disappearing into the trees with that same quiet confidence. I went back inside, holding the radio like it was something precious, which I guess it was. It was a lifeline, a connection, a promise that I wasn't as alone as I'd thought. That night, under the wolf pelt, I pressed the button on the radio and whispered, "Thank you, Marcus." The radio crackled. Then his voice came through, warm and close despite the distance. "Sleep well, city guy." I did. The next 3 weeks fell into a pattern. Marcus would come by every few days, always with some reason, teaching me to identify animal tracks, showing me how to properly winterize the cabin's pipes, bringing me supplies from the small town 40 minutes away when the roads were passable. We'd work together, talk sometimes, sit in comfortable silence other times. I learned things about him in pieces. He'd been trapping for 15 years. He'd inherited the land and the cabin from his grandfather. He'd been married once to a woman who'd lasted 1 winter before deciding she needed civilization more than she needed him. He didn't blame her. He read voraciously, everything from classic literature to field guides. He could identify birds by their calls and knew the forest like other people knew their own homes. I told him things too, about my job in marketing that felt increasingly meaningless, about my family who didn't understand why I'd needed to run, about my ex, David, who'd seemed perfect until I realized I'd been in love with who I wanted him to be, not who he actually was. "You know what the worst part is?" I said one afternoon. We were sitting by the fire, Marcus having stayed longer than usual because the temperature had dropped dangerously low. I don't even miss him specifically. I miss the idea of him. I miss having someone. I miss not being alone. Marcus poked at the fire, sending sparks spiraling up. "Being alone isn't the same as being lonely, isn't it?" "No." He set down the poker and looked at me. "I'm alone most of the time, by choice, but I'm not lonely. Lonely is when you're with someone and still feel empty, when you're performing a version of yourself that isn't real because you think that's what they want." That sounds specific. "My ex-wife," he said quietly. "She wanted me to be different, softer, more social, more interested in the things she cared about, and I tried. God, I tried so hard to be what she needed, but you can't maintain that forever. Eventually, the real you comes through, and then they leave anyway. Except now you've lost yourself in the process." I understood that more than I wanted to admit. "Is that why you're up here? Why you trap instead of doing something that keeps you around people?" "Partly." He was quiet for a moment. "Also because this is who I actually am. I like the silence, the simplicity, knowing that what I do matters in a direct way, I set traps, I check them, I prepare the pelts. There's no ambiguity, no pretending. Sounds peaceful. It is. He looked at me again, and there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite read. But it's also lonely sometimes. Not being alone. Being lonely. Wanting someone to share it with who actually understands it. My heart was beating too fast. Did you ever find that? No. The word hung in the air between us. Thought I had a couple times, but it never worked out. Men who could handle the isolation were usually running from something, not running toward this life. And the ones who loved this life couldn't handle me. Men, he'd said men so casually, like it was just a fact, like he wasn't worried about my reaction. I'm gay, I said, because apparently my brain had decided we were doing this now. Marcus smiled, a real smile that transformed his whole face. I know. How did you know? The way you talked about your ex, the pronouns. Also, you've been looking at me like you're trying to solve a puzzle for 3 weeks now. I felt my face heat up. I have not. You have. It's okay. He leaned back against the couch. For what it's worth, I've been looking back. Oh. So when you gave me the pelt, I started, my voice not quite steady. I gave you the pelt because you needed it and because it was the right thing to do. He held my gaze. But yeah, also because I wanted a reason to keep checking on you, to keep coming back. Marcus, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. You're here to heal, to figure yourself out. I get that. And in 2 months, you're going back to your city life. I know that too. But I want you to know that these visits, these afternoons, they've meant something to me. You've meant something to me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was feel the weight of his words, the honesty in his eyes, the way my entire body was leaning toward him like he was gravity. They've meant something to me too, I whispered. We sat there, the fire crackling between us, the wolf pelt soft under my hands, and everything felt suspended, possible, terrifying. Marcus stood up slowly. It's late. I should go. Stay. The word came out before I could stop it. The temperature's dropping. It's dangerous to travel. Stay. He looked at me for a long moment. You sure? I wasn't sure of anything except that I didn't want him to leave. I'm sure. He stayed. We didn't do anything that night except talk. We sat by the fire until it burned low, and then we rebuilt it together, our movements synchronized like we'd been doing this for years. We talked about everything and nothing. Books we'd loved, places we'd been, dreams we'd given up on, and dreams we still held secretly. When we finally decided to sleep, Marcus took the couch without me having to offer. I went to the bedroom, crawled under the wolf pelt, and lay there staring at the ceiling, acutely aware that he was just one room away. I heard him moving around, settling in. Then his voice soft in the darkness. Good night, city guy. Good night, Marcus. I didn't sleep for a long time, but it wasn't the bad kind of sleeplessness. It was the kind where your mind is too full of possibility to shut down, where you're aware of every sound, every breath, every moment. Something had shifted between us, something that felt like standing at the edge of something vast and unknown. I should have been scared. After David, after everything, I should have been terrified. But all I felt was alive. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. I stumbled out of the bedroom to find Marcus in the tiny kitchen, cooking breakfast like it was the most natural thing in the world. Found some supplies, he said, not turning around. Figured you could use a real meal. I sat at the small table and watched him cook. He moved efficiently, economically, no wasted motion. Everything he did had purpose. It was mesmerizing. He brought over 2 plates loaded with scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast. he'd somehow made in a cast-iron pan. We ate in comfortable silence, and it felt more intimate than any fancy dinner I'd ever had with David. "Marcus," I said, setting down my fork, "about last night. You don't have to explain anything." "I want to." I took a breath. I came up here to be alone, to figure out who I am without someone else defining me, and I still need to do that. But I also need you to know that whatever this is between us, it doesn't feel like a distraction. It feels like the first real thing I've felt in years. He set down his own fork, his expression serious. "I need you to understand something. I'm not a temporary fix. I'm not a rebound. If we do this, if we go down this road, I need you to be sure, because I'm already more invested than I should be." "How can you be invested? We barely know each other." "I know you get up at dawn, even though you're on vacation, because you can't sleep past sunrise. I know you organize the firewood by size, even though it doesn't matter. I know you read the same page of your book 3 times when you're thinking about something else. I know you hum when you're cooking. I know you're kind and funny and braver than you think you are." He leaned forward. "So yeah, I'm invested." My throat felt tight. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't know if I can promise you anything beyond right now. "Then give me right now." His hand reached across the table, palm up, an offer, a question. I put my hand in his. His palm was calloused and warm, his grip sure and steady. "Right now," I agreed. Right now turned into that day, and the next, and the next. Marcus stayed, not every night, but most of them. We fell into a rhythm that felt both new and ancient. He'd check his trap lines in the morning, and I'd work on the novel I'd been pretending I wasn't writing for 5 years. In the afternoons, he'd teach me things: how to read weather patterns, how to move quietly through snow, how to see the forest instead of just looking at it. In the evenings, we'd cook together, our movements in the small kitchen becoming a kind of dance. We'd eat by the fire, and then we'd talk or read or just exist in the same space, comfortable with the silence between words. And at night, under the wolf pelt, we'd lie together, not having sex, not yet, just holding each other, learning the shape of each other's bodies, the way he breathed when he was falling asleep, the way I'd curl into him automatically, the way his hand would find mine in the darkness. It was the slowest, most deliberate courtship I'd ever experienced, and it was perfect. "Tell me about your trapping," I said one night, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. His hand traced lazy patterns on my shoulder. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Why you do it. What it means to you." He was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "My grandfather taught me. He trapped these same lines for 50 years. He taught me that it's not about killing, it's about understanding. You have to know the animals, their patterns, their behaviors, their needs. You have to respect them, and when you take one, you honor it by using everything. The pelt, the meat if it's edible, even the bones." "Like the wolf pelt." "Yeah," his voice softened. "That wolf was magnificent. 7 years old, probably, alpha of his pack. I tracked him for 2 seasons before I found the right place, the right moment. And when I prepared the pelt, I thanked him for his life, for his warmth, for the gift he was giving. And then you gave it to me, because you needed it, because I wanted you to have the best thing I had to offer." He shifted slightly so he could look at me. "Do you understand what that means? In my world, pelts are currency. They're survival. That wolf pelt could have bought supplies for a year, and I gave it to a stranger. I'm not a stranger anymore." "No," he agreed softly. "You're really not." I kissed him then. Our first real kiss. It was gentle and searching and perfect. He tasted like coffee and wood smoke and possibility. When we pulled apart, he was smiling. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks." "Why didn't you?" "Wanted to make sure you were ready." That you were choosing this, not just falling into it because I was convenient. Marcus, you're many things. Convenient isn't one of them. I kissed him again. You're complicated and careful, and you live 3 miles into the woods with no electricity. Having second thoughts? Not even a little bit. We made love that night, slow and reverent under the pelt he'd given me. He was gentle and patient, checking in with me constantly, making sure I was okay, that I wanted this. And I did. God, I wanted it more than I'd wanted anything in years. Afterward, wrapped around each other, he whispered, I'm falling for you. I know, I whispered back. I'm falling for you too. What are we going to do about that? I don't know. And I didn't, because in 3 weeks, I was supposed to leave, go back to my city life, my job, my apartment, my world. But that world felt increasingly distant, increasingly irrelevant. We'll figure it out, Marcus said, holding me tighter. We have time. But we didn't. Not really. Time was already running out. The last 2 weeks passed too quickly. We stopped talking about my departure date. We just existed in the present, stealing every moment we could. Marcus taught me to set traps, though I was terrible at it. I read him chapters from my novel, watching his face as he listened. We cooked elaborate meals from limited ingredients. We made love under the wolf pelt and by the fire, and once, memorably, in the snow behind the cabin because we were both slightly crazy. We were happy, genuinely, completely happy. And then it was my last day. I woke up to find Marcus already awake, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Hey, I said softly. Hey! He brushed hair back from my forehead. How'd you sleep? Like I didn't want morning to come. Yeah, me too. We lay there for a while, not talking. What was there to say? I had a life to go back to. He had a life here. We'd known from the beginning this was temporary, except it didn't feel temporary. It felt like the most permanent thing I'd ever experienced. Come with me, I said suddenly. Marcus closed his eyes. You know I can't. Why not? You could visit, see the city, see if you like it. I've seen cities, they're not for me. Then I'll stay. No. He opened his eyes, and they were firm. You have a life, a career, friends, family. You can't just throw that away. I threw it away when I came here. I threw it away the moment I realized that I've been more myself in 2 months with you than in 32 years without you. That's the isolation talking, the romance of it. You go back, you'll remember why you built that life, and you'll resent me for making you give it up. You don't know that. I do, because I've seen it before. My ex-wife. She loved it here at first, loved the idea of it. But after one winter, she was climbing the walls. The isolation became suffocating. The simplicity became boring, and she left. And she was right to leave, because staying would have destroyed her. I'm not her, no, but you're also not a trapper. You're not built for this life, and that's okay. That's not a judgment. It's just reality. I sat up, frustrated. So what, we just end this? Pretend it never happened? No. He sat up too, taking my hands. We remember it, we're grateful for it, and we let each other go with love instead of resentment. That's a very mature, reasonable perspective, and I hate it. He smiled sadly. I'm not happy about it either. There has to be another option, long distance, visits, something. You really want to do long distance with someone who lives off the grid and checks his traps more than his phone? Yes, I squeezed his hands. Yes, I do. Marcus, I love you. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I love you, and I think you love me too. I do love you. His voice was rough. That's why I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing is us being together. The right thing is you going back and living your life. And if in 6 months or a year you still feel this way, if you still want this, then we'll figure it out. But you need to be sure, really sure. not just caught up in a beautiful moment. I wanted to argue, to fight, to make him see that this wasn't just a moment. But looking at his face, at the pain and love and resolve there, I realized he was right. Not about us not working, but about me needing to be sure. 6 months, I said. 6 months. And you'll answer if I call? I'll answer. He pulled me close. I'll always answer. We spent that last day together, not doing anything special, just being. We took a walk through the forest, Marcus pointing out tracks and signs I'd learned to read. We cooked one last meal together. We made love slowly, memorizing each other, and when it was time for me to go, when my bags were packed and in the car, he handed me the wolf pelt. Marcus, no, that's yours. It's yours now. I gave it to you, and I want you to have it, something to remember this by. I don't need a pelt to remember you. Take it anyway. He folded it carefully and put it in my arms. Please. I took it, tears streaming down my face. I love you. I love you too, city guy. We kissed one last time, and then I got in my car and drove away, watching him disappear in my rearview mirror. The drive back to the city felt like moving through water. Everything was too bright, too loud, too much. My apartment felt like a museum of someone else's life. My job felt meaningless. My friends felt distant. But I didn't run back. I sat with the discomfort. I went to therapy. I wrote my novel. I figured out who I was, not in reaction to a breakup, but as an actual person with wants and needs and dreams. And every night I slept under the wolf pelt, and I thought about Marcus. 6 months passed, then 7. I kept waiting for the feeling to fade, for the memory of him to become less sharp, less immediate. It didn't. At 8 months, I called my boss and gave my notice. I sublet my apartment. I packed my car with only what mattered, and I drove north. It was spring when I arrived. The snow melted, the forest green and alive. I found the cabin easily, muscle memory guiding me down the familiar road. Marcus was there, splitting wood behind the cabin. He looked up when he heard my car, and his face went through about 6 different emotions in 2 seconds. I got out of the car, slowly. So I thought about what you said, about being sure. And I'm sure, I'm completely, totally sure. I want this life. I want you. I want to learn to trap and split wood and live in the middle of nowhere. I want to write my novels by the fire while you check your lines. I want to grow old with you in this forest. He set down the axe. You gave up your job. I gave up a job. I can freelance. Right, we'll figure it out. Your apartment. Sublet it, might sell it eventually. Your life. My life is wherever you are. I walked toward him. You said 6 months. It's been 8. I'm sure, Marcus. I've never been more sure of anything. He closed the distance between us and kissed me, hard and desperate and full of relief. When we broke apart, he was smiling, really smiling. You came back. I came home, I corrected. He laughed, pulling me close. You're insane. Probably. You still love me? More than ever. That was 5 years ago. I'm writing this from our cabin, the one we've expanded and improved together, the one where we've built a life that's simple and hard and absolutely perfect. Marcus is outside, checking his trap lines. In an hour, he'll come back and we'll have coffee on the porch and talk about our day. I still have the wolf pelt. It's on our bed, a reminder of the night a trapper gave me his best pelt and changed my life forever. Sometimes I run my hands over it and remember that first winter, the cold, the fear, the absolute certainty that I'd found something worth keeping. People ask me sometimes if I miss the city, if I regret giving up my career, my old life, and I tell them the truth. I don't miss it at all, because that wasn't really living. It was performing, it was pretending. This is living, waking up next to the man I love, writing stories by the fire, learning to read the forest, being part of something bigger than myself. Marcus was right about a lot of things, but he was wrong about one crucial thing. I was built for this life. I just didn't know it until he gave me his best pelt and showed me what real warmth felt like. And every day, I'm grateful he did. Total char count 24,847.